Welcome to the Wellness Empowerment Project. I'm Trish.
And I'm Julie. We are two nurses exploring holistic healing and wellness practices to empower you to be the leader of your own health.
Join us as we have fun making the weird shit a normal part of your everyday life. Hi, and welcome to the Wellness Empowerment Project. Today, we have Kris Ashley. Kris is a dynamic coach, author, speaker, podcast host, and television host with a passion for personal development, spirituality, and science. She has spent over 2 decades immersed in the research and teachings that she shares. Following her passion for personal development, Kris trained with renowned life coach Mary Morrissey and began her coaching business, Change Your Mind with Kris Ashley. She also launched a podcast with the same name. In 2002, she published her first book, Change Your Mind, Change Your Reality, which received endorsements from spiritual and health heavyweights such as Michael Beckwith, Marcy Shimoff, Bob Doyle, John Gray, and Anita Moorjani. She has shared the stage with icons such as Les Brown, Dr. Joe Vitale, Joseph McClendon, Jim Kwik, and Sharon Letcher. Whether it's energizing a crowd at a conference or distilling wisdom into a podcast microphone, she's a force that captivates and inspires and is always ready to motivate and lead others to their best selves. Welcome, Kris.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here with you, Trish and Julie. I really appreciate the time.
So happy to have you join us here on the Wellness Empowerment Project. How did you fall into this? Was this your first dream of what you wanted your life to look like, or did you start with another career?
I did start with another career. That's a great question. I was originally heading up a marketing department in the tech industry, and I loved what I did. I had a great team. I was super driven and passionate, and I had all of this just control over the product, and I loved it. And then unfortunately, that company went under, and I became head of digital marketing at a larger company, and I just started having panic attacks every day. Like every single day. I was like, okay, this is the universe being like, hey, you're not where you're supposed to be. And I ended up having a really big health scare. I found out I had an autoimmune disease, and I realized that the universe was actually like taking me by the shoulders and shaking me like, hey, you're not paying attention, right? Before it was poking me, and then it was like, hey, you really need to focus on this. And at the time, I was also taking a yoga teacher training because I really wanted to help people. I loved yoga. I wanted to open my own wellness center eventually. I wanted to coach people. I've always been a teacher in some aspect of my life. Before the tech industry, I was teaching English. And I took a leap of faith and quit my job halfway through yoga teacher training. And just I just surrendered to the universe. And very quickly, they ended up making me a teacher and then a manager. And then I became regional director. And then when COVID happened, that company totally closed. And I started my own yoga company, which I actually just sold this past April, which was a great feeling. And in there, I also launched my coaching company. Like you said, I launched my podcast. I wrote my book. I also have a television show called Beyond Reality that's launching soon. So it was one of those like total leap of faith. Like I have to just surrender because I'm not on the path that I was meant to be on.
When you think back to that first job that you talked about that you loved, like
Yeah.
it felt really aligned. Now reflecting back, were there some really subtle signs that you were not in the right place? Or do you think it really was moving to a whole nother company?
One of the things, and that's a really interesting question. One of the things I've said a lot to just friends and my husband is every single thing that I've done in life, every single thing that I've gone through has led me and given me the tools that I needed for right now. So all of that stuff I learned in marketing, thank God I learned all of that because I apply all of that to my coaching. Like I build funnels, right? I run ads, I host webinars, all of that skill set is so important for what I do. And all of the teaching when I taught English before that, because I went on to teach yoga teacher training, and that allowed me to become really proficient at public speaking. And now I'm a speaker and I speak on stages. You mentioned some of the headliners I've opened for. And every single thing has happened. And I talk about that with my origin story that put me on this spiritual path too, that led to my spiritual awakening that I'm totally happy to share if you want. I think everything happens for a reason, and it's exactly what you need to go through at that moment. But as far as signs, like I was saying with the panic attacks, like the universe does give us signs when it's time to move on. And if you don't push yourself outside of your comfort zone and make yourself uncomfortable and go for change and take action steps towards your dream life, then the universe is going to make you so uncomfortable with where you are that you don't have any choice but to move. So you can always skip that uncomfortable push from the universe and make that move yourself.
Chris, you mentioned your spiritual awakening,
Yeah.
and I'm happy you mentioned that because you do reference a little bit of it in your book, Change Your Mind to Change Your Reality. And one of the questions I was thinking is obviously, if you don't mind sharing your spiritual awakening, but what makes it a spiritual awakening versus just personal growth? Like, how do you even know the difference?
I love that question. Do you want me to start with sharing the origin story so people have a little bit of context?
Yes, please.
Okay, cool. And I'm sure you've heard a similar theme with other guests. My own change happened because of my own trauma. And it's like I was just saying, sometimes I believe that we choose big life circumstances before we incarnate, and they are going to ready the soil, plant the seeds, and then it's up to us if we actually grow from them. So that I'll get to your question after. But when I was 12 years old, I was sexually abused by a family member for 4 years. And I had this really big, tight knit, extended Italian family. And when they found out what happened to me, many of them disowned me. I was getting calls and letters from family members who had been like second mothers to me, telling me they didn't love me anymore and I wasn't their family anymore. And I was 15 at the time. And as you can imagine, that left me with a lot of what I call low vibration emotions, right? Things like anger and guilt and shame that as a young adolescent, I didn't know how to deal with. A lot of adults don't know how to cope with those types of emotions. And they put me in a really downward spiral. I was self-harming, I was doing drugs, I was getting in trouble in school, like every cliche check. And of course, I didn't know that at the time. I thought it was just me, right? And my life totally changed when someone handed me a book. And what this book did was it showed me that there are other ways of thinking and being in this life, that there are other ways to perceive things. And I remember turning the pages and feeling, wow, this feels like truth for the first time. And I like to say I was like a sleeper agent, right? Something inside of me just woke up. And then when I finished that book, I started reaching for more. And I was insatiable. I was devouring every metaphysical, spiritual, new age, personal development book I could get my hands on. And I'm still that way, by the way. I started going to retreats. I found teachers to study under. I was just needing all of this. And I was doing all these healing modalities too through all of this. And I thought I was just like uncovering the divine mysteries of the universe, right? But I was doing the hard inner work, is what I was really doing as well, and changing my perspective. And my life did a 180. I was able to manifest amazing things into my life. My outlook totally changed. I started really caring about my health and functional medicine and all of these things. But the other part of my story is that as I started to get better, my mother started to get worse because her family had been split down the seams and she didn't have these teachers and healing modalities and books that I did. And it manifested as physical illness for her. She got cancer. She got these rare blood disorders that her doctors at Northwestern were like, we've never seen this before. And so they did what they do. They gave her pills. And then they gave her pills for the side effects of those pills. And then they were just throwing anything at the wall, hoping something would stick. And she was on a fentanyl patch. She was on Dilaudid, which is another narcotic. She was on like 10 pills a day. And as a result of that, she slept for all but a few hours of daylight. She would fall down all the time. She would nod off at the dinner table. We would have these amazing conversations that she just wouldn't remember the next day. And that lasted almost 15 years. And so then I had this compounded guilt that I had destroyed my family and broken my mother. But I realized in the end that my mother was my biggest teacher. Because for every step she took deeper into depression and illness and victimization, I climbed in the other direction out of that tunnel because I saw what happens when you make that choice, because it is a choice. And then I saw what was happening in my own life as I was changing my mind, which is why my company and my podcast and my book is called Change Your Mind to Change Your Reality. I really made this promise to myself that I would do everything I could to prioritize my own mental, spiritual, emotional, physical health and always do that. And it's a promise I've kept to this day. So I spent 2 decades just immersed in this research. I'm still reading like a book a week. And then I finally decided it was time to give back. And that's when I took that plunge I was talking about earlier.
Thank you for sharing that. That's really inspiring, powerful, eye-opening, I think, also for a lot of people. But going back to my other question is that how did you know it was a spiritual awakening versus just you doing your own personal growth and development? Or is that something you didn't realize what it was till after the fact?
Yeah, totally. Thanks for reminding me of your question. I think they can happen simultaneously. I think there definitely was tons of personal growth and development, and there still is. It's still ongoing. If we're here on earth, there's still things to learn and ways to grow. I say spiritual awakening because it opened my eyes to spirituality, and I was never introduced to spirituality before that. It introduced that book I was talking about was called The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life. And not many people have heard of it now, but it was by Drunvalo Melchizedek. And I ended up becoming a student of his. And what it did really is it introduced me to a lot of ideas. We were just talking about Billy Carson before this, but it introduced me to Zecharia Sitchin, who's like the grandfather of ancient astronaut theory. It introduced me to Dolores Cannon. It introduced me to sacred geometry. It introduced me to meditation and to ancient Egyptian mystery schools and the Emerald Tablets of Thoth and all these things. And then I followed every breadcrumb. And I really started learning about all of these different spiritual ideas. And my outlook became a very spiritual one. So, yes, there was tons of personal development happening, but there was also a lot of spiritual just growth happening. Also, it totally looks like your cat is licking your head, and it's really cute.
This cat is a little needy.
I got one of those.
Your story hits a chord with me. I have a friend whose daughter went through the same experience that you did. My friend and her daughter are in the throes of that. And there is still so much pain and divide going on with the two of them. I guess my question for you is really around through all of these breadcrumbs that you followed, do you feel like those are things that were just part of your healing journey? You talk about it being a spiritual awakening, but when you have sexual trauma, that is such a deep rooted pain that is so challenging to heal from. It sounds really your subconscious was leading you down this path of ways to heal yourself from the inside out. Do you think that was part of where all of this went?
Yeah. And I just want to preface this also by saying this healing journey and this changing of perspective didn't happen overnight. So I don't want anyone to be listening to this and be like, oh, I just need to read a couple books or do a couple healing modalities and then I'm like fixed. This was like over several decades. Yeah, I think all of it was a healing journey. And that's that promise I made to myself that I was going to do everything I could to heal and healing on every single level. For me, seeking knowledge and learning about these different perspectives was massive for my healing because I really do believe now that we create our own reality and that we do incarnate with certain big life events that give us the opportunity to grow and that other people really are connected to us and are mirrors for us and opportunities to grow. And every adversity and every challenge and every heartbreak we go through has an Easter egg in it, right? And once you find that, you can level up and learn and grow. But that's not to diminish any pain along the way. The way out of the pain is through it. Like you have to dive into it. You have to feel your emotions. And I think what sexual trauma does to a lot of people, and myself included for a while, which is why I was self-harming, why I was turning to drugs and all these things, is because you tend to hold it all inside or you feel alone or you don't even, in my case, I didn't really understand why I was so angry at the world. My parents ended up taking me, this isn't something I don't think I've talked about on any podcast, but my parents ended up taking me to Mayo Clinic to get like a psych test because I'd been seeing a therapist for a while. I was so angry. I was just really troubled. And they gave me this long, long test. It was like full day of testing. I think I was like 14 at the time. And I just remember this so clearly. There was one question amid like hundreds that was like, have you ever had an unwanted sexual experience? And the way it was worded was so innocent in the way that it was like, even if you had someone like gently touch you on the shoulder that you didn't want, it could have been a yes. Do you know what I mean? What I'm trying to say? It was just like so inviting and hey, we're not going to judge you. Like you didn't. So I said yes. And it was like, if so, by whom? And I wrote it on there. And I remember the evaluators after talking to me about it and I begged them not to tell my mom. Begged them. And they were like, okay, we promise you we won't. And then the story my mom told me, which is total probably bullshit, was they sent a copy to the school because I had gotten, like, kicked out of school, and the copy they gave my mom had that taken out, but the copy they sent the school didn't, and she had went and read all the records, which is probably bullshit, like, that she was probably trying to cover for them, but that's how she ended up finding out, and then once it was and that's how I ended up finding out. I was like, "Oh, that's why I'm so angry? That's why?" And then it was like, "Oh, when you look at people who have gone through this, like, a lot of them self-harm, a lot of them turn to drugs, a lot of them have this, but I thought I was just in this isolated thing. I didn't realize that I was just this, like, textbook case. But once I finally admitted what had happened, that's when the real healing happened, and I am such a big proponent in feeling your emotions, and that's what all those healing modalities really did, was allow me to just feel them, and I write about that a lot in the book, like, when you have repressed emotions, they can lead to not just mental issues, but like physical issues in your body. So I think like really allowing yourself to go through and feel it as well as giving you an outside perspective, like another way to view it, like it all combines for your healing journey.
Kris, thank you for sharing all of that. You noted there too that a lot of these different perspectives, a lot of us, when we start to get these different perspectives, sometimes we just think, oh, it's just someone else's viewpoint. And do I want to adopt it? Yes or no? But what I loved in your book is that you really, a lot of the work that you talked about of the changing the mind and the body as well. And even with your belief about we incarnate to these different events and how we're all connected, really all connects with quantum physics. Do you mind going into some of the topics like the double slit experiment or entanglements? That kind of really connects on how we're able to not just change our perceptions, but really change our relationship of how we can view our past experiences as well as our present reality.
Yeah, I think we live in such an exciting time because science is backing up what spirituality and mysticism have been saying for so long. And I think that quantum physics is just the scientific explanation of all of these things, of spirituality. So it's cool because, some people listen to this stuff and they're like, oh, that's way too woo. But when you have all these scientific experiments saying the same thing, you get all those more, what is it, like the more left brain, or the more left brained people. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of examples in quantum physics. I think one of my favorites is the many worlds theory that basically says that there are other timelines and dimensions laid on top of ours going on at the exact same time. So let me back up. And I get a lot of this from Dolores Cannon too. If you imagine you're on this timeline, right? And then every time you have to make a choice, the timeline splits. So there's a version of you that is living out the timeline you're on that has made the choice you do. And then there's another version of you who goes on another timeline who has made that other choice. And the timelines are probably pretty similar, but then each time both of those versions of you have to make another choice, the timeline split and split, and you can see how this is like this huge branch. And that's something a lot of spirituality talks about in Dolores Cannon, but quantum physics actually backs it up with the many worlds theory. So there is the experiment that you were talking about in quantum physics where the scientists would take a photon of light and they would send it through a slit in a board and it would hit a wall behind it, or they would do it with an electron. they noticed that every time they did it, it would show up in this wave pattern, meaning when it hits the back wall, it's thicker along the middle and then it thins out. If you think about like water going through a slit, and it hits the back wall, it's gonna hit with the most force, the area that's like across from that slit, and then it thins out. Does that make sense? So they realized, like, oh, this is really weird because that's telling us that electrons, which is matter, are actually a wave, right? And not a particle. So they set up detectors like cameras to watch the experiment. And every time they did that, the electrons would go through the slits and form a particle pattern on the wall. And sorry, there were two slits. So it would go through and it would show like two lines on the back wall. They're like, that's weird. This is acting different. Every time we watch the experiment, it's showing up as a particle. And every time we don't watch the experiment, it shows up as a wave. So they're like, okay, this is weird. Matter can be a particle or a wave. And then they took it a step farther and they were like, okay, we're going to try and trick the experiment. So they took the detector and they moved it like way back in the room so that like before it was like showing it in action. And now it was like, here's the slits, here's the wall, and then the detector is back here. So it would hit the wall and then the detector would record it. And what they noticed was the exact same thing happened. So every time the detector was in the room, it would show a particle pattern. Every time it wasn't, it would show a wave pattern. But because there were, oh, I forgot the most important part of this experiment. They were splitting it into two. Sorry about that. So the one piece would hit the wall and one piece would fly by the detector. But the piece that hit the wall would have hit the wall before the piece that flew by the detector. So what they realized was when the detector was on, it still showed a particle pattern. When the detector was off, it still showed a wave pattern. But because it had hit the wall before the detector was there, it changed and it was like it knew what was going to happen. So they're like, this is crazy because you can't go back in time and change something, but it did. It happened that way. Does that make sense? Did I explain that well?
Yes.
Okay. I know that's
Yeah.
like it's really complicated, but basically it was like you can't go back in time and change something, but it showed that you could. What they realized was there's this like cloud, this realm of possibilities where every time we make a choice, the electron, they call it the wave function collapsing. So imagine that there's like this wave, this cloud where every possible scenario takes place. But once you make a choice, it collapses and matter like solidifies. And that's when it becomes a particle. So they're saying that every other possible choice that you can make exists out there in another realm. But once you make it, it like solidifies. So all of these other choices exist in different dimensions. So the many worlds theory really does back up everything Dolores Cannon was saying and all these other spiritual mystics, because all of these other places along this waveform that a particle can exist in different dimensions. So this idea of quantum jumping, you can actually jump timelines and that's how the law of attraction works. That you can manifest what you want, and what you're really doing is moving to another timeline where everything you have exists. So there might be other timelines where you have everything you want right now. I just was reading an article the other day that was like, quantum physics proves that you are balancing out all of your other lifetimes along timelines right now. So if you're going through difficulties right now, it's because there's a version of you that has everything made, right? So it's all a balance and it's all energy and it's all facets of you. And I know that's really hard to wrap your mind around, but it's so fascinating.
I agree. I think that it is hard to wrap your brain around that, especially when life is so concrete at times. And the way we're socialized and we're educated is very concrete and very specific. And so when you start to talk about many worlds layering on top of each other, it's like in timelines, it's like, what does that actually look like and feel like? And does it really matter that we are able to wrap our heads around it? Because I feel like probably not. If we can figure out how we can leverage the possibilities or the potential of that to be able to create the world and create the life that we want.
Yeah, absolutely. And to speak to what you just said, life seems so concrete, but everything around us is energy. Like even atoms, like people, like when I was in school, we learned like an atom was a solid, tangible thing. But an atom is actually a spinning vortex of invisible energy. If you think about those little, like anytime the wind picks up some leaves and it's like a little mini tornado, an atom looks like that, but without the leaves. So if you were to look at it under a microscope, you would just see a physical void. Like from far away, it would be blurry, it would get less in focus. And when you were on top of it, it would be a physical void because there's nothing to see. It's energy spinning and vibrating. And atoms make up everything in our universe. So everything really is energy. And we really, it's like we've just plugged into this dimension. So we see everything that way. But every energy, we're able to manipulate energy. Right? Energy can never be destroyed or created. It's always there. So we really do have the power to create our own reality. And everything is energy. That means pathogens are energy, viruses are energy, diseases are energy. And it's just about shifting your mindset because if you truly believe something, then you have the power to change it.
I wanted to get into something that you discuss in your book around the power of words and the internal conversation that you have with yourself, because I think that is something that people can really tap into if this is new to them, how certain words or certain emotions have different frequencies of energy. You may be in a situation where you're in a low vibration, but if you are intentional, that you can actually raise your own frequency. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Language is so powerful. And it's the words you speak, the words you think, the words you write down. You might have seen like memes about it. Like that's why they call it spelling because you're casting your spell out into the universe. And I'm sure you've heard of that famous experiment with Dr. Emoto where he wrote words on the water and then he looked at them under a microscope and like they were beautiful. The words that said love and faith and harmony and all those things were like beautiful crystals. And then the ones where he wrote like anger and fear and pain were just like these ugly blobs. And if our body is built of, what is it, like 60, 70% water, then imagine the effect words have on you. Different words carry different vibrations, different frequencies, like things like you feel it. You feel it when you say things like love and peace and joy, like you feel that lift in you. When you raise your vibration, you're feeling those emotions. That's how you manifest more of that into your life. That's how you really can change your kind of antenna out into the world. So when we're saying things like there's different like ways to say things. Like I always like to say if I'm manifesting something like I choose to live a long, happy and healthy life, like whatever it is. If you say something like I want to live a long, happy and healthy life, want gives the idea that you don't have it yet. So you're reinforcing that idea that you don't have it yet. If you say something like I'm going to live a long, happy and healthy life, like going to gives the idea that it's always out here in the future, and then it's, like, always out there in the future. It's like, when do you attain it? When do you get it? So there's different, like, kinda tricks that you can use because you wanna speak as if everything is happening right now, like, you have it all right now. You wanna feel the emotions of having it right now. That is how you truly manifest. If you really wanna manifest the life of your dreams, you have to have a really clear vision, know what you want. That's, like, the first step. You have to feel the emotion of having it right now, and that's putting you on that higher frequency, and that comes back to the language you use. You have to speak it as if you already have it, and then the last step, which, books and films like The Secret kinda left out, is you have to take action towards it because action kinda kickstarts the universe. You can't just kick back like it's a genie in a bottle and just wait for it to come to you. That's the secret ingredient, and then you just let go of the how. The how is not up to you. Your job is to get clear, to speak it into existence, to feel the emotions, to take action, because all of this is sending out signals to the quantum field, to the universe, whatever you wanna call it, to the divine. And then you just surrender. And we think as humans that we have to go from A to B to C, but the universe knows how to bring you from A to Z. It knows how to move mountains, and it's going to put the right people on your path. It's going to give you the right tools to take that next step. So, no matter where you are, there's always a step that you can take. And I know I got a little bit off of language there, but hopefully that answered your question.
I just think that everything you spoke about, especially when we're bringing in the quantum physics, it's so empowering. It really puts you in the driver's seat, and I think is exciting that you have this potential. You have this realm of possibilities more than you probably realize. Going back to your book, I remembered you said that when someone says they're triggered, they're playing the victim. You mentioned watching your mom falling in and playing the victim, but I'd like to know if you would go and dive a little bit deeper about what you mean by the triggering piece, playing the victim. Because we live in this world right now where everyone and their mother is putting up trigger warnings right and left. So
Yeah.
I'd really like to know what your thoughts are on if there's any role in trigger warnings and if you even think that they're helpful.
Yeah, totally. And I just wanted to say really quick to what you started off with. If you can, it is empowering. And if you can imagine it, you can create it in your life. And that's not to say that challenges aren't going to happen or adversity is not going to happen. Just because you're awakened or more conscious or you're into this stuff or you've gone on a healing journey doesn't mean like life's going to stop happening. But it empowers you to have better tools so that when challenges and adversity do come up, you have that perspective where you're like, oh, what can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? What next steps can I take? Because that's really what personal growth is about. So I just wanted to say that as far as triggers, so I believe that triggers are mirrors. So they show you the unhealed parts of yourself. So people who are unhealed can find offense in pretty much anything. But when you are healed, you know that the actions and words of others have nothing to do with you. Everyone is so wrapped up in their own head and their own stuff. And we tend to take things really personally because we're like, oh, how is this affecting me? But most of the time, people aren't out there trying to create chaos and havoc in your life. They're just like processing their own life. They're in survival mode or they're trying to take care of their own needs. The Four Agreements is one of my favorite books, and one of the agreements is never take anything personally. And I think that's a big reason why we get triggered or why we let people hurt us or why we get offended. And I'm not saying it's easy. We teach what we need to hear. I need to hear this as much as anyone else. But I think that's really what it comes down to. And we're all reflections of each other. When we learn to respond thoughtfully rather than react emotionally, which is what being triggered is, then a lot of healing can happen. We can see things from other people's perspective. A lot of times we just see the tip of the iceberg. Here, I'll tell you this little teaching story. I do it in the book, but imagine you're in your yard and you hear this meowing coming from outside. And you're like, oh, I'm going to go check it out. And in the far corner of your yard, you see this scrawny black and white cat. And you're like, I love cats. I'm going to go pet that kitty. And you go over to pet it and it arches its back and it hisses and it swats at you. Now, your immediate knee jerk triggered reaction might be, this is an evil cat. This is a mean cat. Like that cat's kind of an asshole. But if you stay and you allow yourself to really see that cat, then you might notice its leg is bleeding. And so suddenly you're like, okay, this animal's hurt. And if you keep seeing it, you might be like, oh my God, there are 4 tiny kittens hiding behind that cat. And suddenly your perspective shifts to one of concern, empathy, compassion. Now, just like the cat, people who lash out at you are often dealing with their own pain and their own fear. So by extending compassion and this ability to see things from others' perspective, not only will you possibly make a friend or teach them how to not react in the future to someone else, like you're working on your own healing, your own triggers. Because so much of it is just because like we're taking things personally that we don't need to take personally. I'm a big fan of David R. Hawkins' book, Letting Go, The Pathway of Surrender. I don't know if you've read it, but you might be interested because he really puts all those emotions on a scale like you were asking about. But one thing he also talks about, and I believe he was a psychiatrist, is he talks about how people with repressed emotions are like pressure cookers. Like they're just waiting to release steam. They just want to like vent steam on the world. So he says that outside events and people don't make us angry. We're already angry, and those outside events give us an opportunity to unleash that and to vent that. So a lot of times people who are easily triggered are like pressure cookers where they're waiting for any opportunity to just release some of that steam, but it's because they've gone through trauma or they've gone through adversity or they've gone through challenges, right? This isn't pointing the finger at anyone. I'm not sure I super worded it. Like, I think you're just playing the victim because it's nothing's right or wrong or good or bad. We're all here on this journey on earth, having human experiences, trying to figure this stuff out, working towards our own healing, growing in our consciousness, leveling up. And it's just that someone hasn't done their own healing work that is often triggered. As far as it being prevalent in society, it totally has been. I feel like the tide's changing a little bit. I don't know, maybe with the last election a little bit, it seems like things are changing. But I think we went a little too far. I think the pendulum swung a little too far because you can't expect everyone else to coddle you and to make everything this like safe and secure place just for you because everyone has their own experience. Everyone lives in their own reality. There are countless realities going on all around us. We talked about that with the timeline. Like two people can live next door to each other and seem to be living in different realities because they are. You create your own reality, what you choose to focus on. And we know that just from like the news stations people watch that creates their own reality. We saw it happen with COVID. We're seeing it happen now. I think the true definition of empathy is to be able to understand that other people are living in their own reality and that your reality isn't any more important than their reality and it isn't any more real than their reality and that it's not any more legit than their reality and just having compassion for that.
I think that this kind of circles back to something you just said right before all of this, which is the way that you heal from pain is that you go through it. Like you have to face what you have experienced and you go through it. I
Yeah.
personally have gone through therapy where certain things that triggered me, that was like my homework assignment. Okay. I start to have a panic attack when I run over rocks. After I deployed in Afghanistan, I ran in Afghanistan and ran on rocks all the time because that's what our base was. So I would have panic attacks after I came home. And so it was like, okay, go find a rocky path, which there was no trigger warning there. I knew it was coming. And truly, by rethinking about that sensation of running over rocks, I was able to move through it. And so I think you're right. We're coming from a good place. We don't want people to feel pain, but there is some necessary aspect of going through it in order to heal.
Totally. And I think your example also ties back to what we were saying earlier, where you have the choice to push yourself out of your comfort zone every day. You can try something you've never tried before every day. You can do something that terrifies you every day. You can lift heavy weights every day to make yourself uncomfortable so that then the universe doesn't have to be like, "Oh, you're not moving. I'm going to make you so uncomfortable." Because when you don't challenge yourself like you did, you're going to get challenged eventually. You're going to have to walk over rocks eventually. And if you don't make yourself, like it's going to be, I think part of the triggering is that people tend to blame outside events and other people on their own suffering, for their own suffering. And that's not how we achieve peace. That's not how we achieve healing. Like blaming other people for your suffering allows you to play the victim, allows you to be a martyr, allows you to stay in your own world of never feeling guilty and stay in your comfort zone, but it doesn't allow you to step into your own power and heal. And true healing can never come from blaming other people. So there's a level of taking accountability for your own healing. Like, I'm a big believer in you are not responsible for the things that happen to you, for the traumas you've gone through, but you and are alone are responsible for your own healing.
Amen. I feel say that again for the people in the back. Like,
Yeah.
Yes.
And people get really defensive when they hear this kind of stuff. And again, if there's internet trolls or if there's anyone, it's just a reflection. If you hear that and you're upset, and people say this when they hear people say you create your own reality. They're like, I didn't create this thing that my ancestors went through or this thing that I've gone through in my life. And it's sure, but you create your own reality now. And you always have a choice. I still believe we create what we're going to deal with before we incarnate, but you have a choice right now. And if you're going to focus on the past and you're going to live in that anger, from a science standpoint, your body doesn't know the difference between you living through that past trauma and you just having a memory of it. So the same cortisol gets released, the same adrenaline, the same everything. And that's sending messages down your central nervous system, which sends messages to your endocrine system and your immune system and your digestive system. And your whole body goes into survival mode and it thinks you're going through that trauma right now. And that's just from thinking about it. Our thoughts are so powerful. So, yeah, healing is a choice. You have a choice to change your perspective, to push yourself out, to run on the rocks, to feel it, and then you move through it.
Kris, I was going to ask you this, but I feel like you may have already answered it, but I want to give the opportunity in case there was something else you wanted to add was if you could give an actionable step for our listeners that they could start today to start to transform their reality, what would it be?
I'm a huge proponent in seeing things from other perspectives. So read, educate yourself, try different healing modalities, try to see things from other points of view, read the 4 agreements, read Letting Go the Path of Surrender, read anything that's like spiritually written. Books are so amazing because it's taking someone's life experience and life wealth of knowledge and just condensing it down to 200 pages, and you're getting the best of it, the best of their advice. And then just, knowing that we're all in this together. We're all reflections of each other. We're all parts of the same. If you're hurting someone or you're causing someone to feel humiliated or anger or shame, that's getting reflected out into the quantum field. And that's just sending everyone on earth more opportunities and people and experiences that are going to make them feel those emotions. The way that we heal the outside world is by healing ourselves. And the way we heal a sick society is by healing ourselves. So you can't force anyone to change by attacking them online or trying to force your viewpoint on top of them. What you can do is you can change yourself. And then as you rise up and level up, you can offer other people a helping hand, but you become this beacon for everyone. You become this light because people are going to look and be like, oh, what's Trish doing? What's Julie doing? She looks really happy. She looks really great these days. That's how, and it sends this ripple effect out. And that's how we heal the world. You can't fight for peace. You can't start a war for peace. You can't heal anything through anger. Angry people can't heal the world. Only peaceful people.
well, I know one book that people can look for. Change Your Mind to Change Your Reality. I think that your
Yeah.
book really outlines simple steps in order to start to change your present self to get yourself to your future self. So go out, buy Kris's book. I think that you will love it as much as we do. We really appreciate you being here with us today, Kris. Are you on any social media? What's a good way for people, aside from your book, what's a good way for people to get in touch with you or work with you one-on-one?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I am on social media. I'm Change Your Mind with Kris. Kris has a K, not a C. So I'm Change Your Mind with Kris on TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube. I think I'm Kris Ashley on Facebook. And krisashley.net is my website. So you can find links there to my podcast. Trish was a guest not too long ago. I'd love to have you on as well, Julie. And yeah, the book and everything's on the website. So krisashley.net. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate you both. And I think conversations like these are so important. So thank you for what you both do in the world. The world needs more like you. So thank you.
Thank you, Kris. It was a pleasure having you on.
Thanks, Kris.
Have a good day.
Thanks for joining. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow, subscribe, and share with a friend.
Want to learn more about a specific topic? Follow and drop us a line on Instagram so we can explore it more with you.